lecture and showed Walking with Guns is because I wanted you all to have another piece of knowledge to integrate with what we're doing in Walking My Shoes. Notice the similarities in the titles. One is Walking with Guns, the other Walk in My Shoes. Both of them, however, are intergenerational conversations about something, whether it's finding your purpose, whether it's issues of race, whether it's issues of faith and love, or whether it is this challenge of nonviolent civil disobedience for our generation and what that looks like. That is something that comes up in Walk in My Shoes. It was a conversation that came up at the book signing. It didn't come up in detail, but they hinted on what is the contemporary application of civil rights to deal with the issues that we are currently faced. I think that we do ourselves a disjustice by looking at the civil rights movement as this something that happened in history that has no purpose, no application now. What Dr. King, Ambassador Young, Joseph Lowry, Jesse Jackson, Hosea Williams, Ralph David Abernathy, what they did was they gave us a blueprint. Okay? They gave us a blueprint. And unfortunately, that blueprint was applied to issues of race during that time. It was applied to race. Now, when Dr. King was assassinated, he was beginning to take on the issue of poverty. One of the things that Ambassador Young spoke about on Monday is that we've kind of dealt with race and racism, kind of, sort of. We've made some headway. He said that we've even made headway when it comes to war. But when we're looking at the triple evils of race, poverty, and militarism, we have not dealt with this issue of poverty at its core. And it is beginning to reveal itself in some very, very traumatic ways. One of them is youth violence and gun violence. That's what I want us to talk about for the next couple of sessions, because that is the biggest war that hip-hop is facing. Now, if you think of it this way, that there's nothing going on with hip-hop that's not going on, well, there's nothing going on with the hip-hop community of practice that's not going on with the African-American community. Think of it that way. Let's get outside the music for now. The music is only one expression. When we think about the overall community, the title of this book, where's your hip-hop wars? The title of the book is called Hip-Hop Wars. What we talk about when we talk about hip-hop and why it matters. Let's get into a conversation about why this matters. The number one war that we're talking about is this issue of violence. And the reason why, I would contend, the reason why it matters is because it is not only a war in hip-hop community, in our community, but it is a war that we are facing as an African-American minority community. Okay? I was looking at the news the other night, and this was Sunday. Sunday I was looking at the news, and the first three stories were about gun violence. Okay? The first story was about a young man that happened to be out being an adolescent, and he ended up egging a car for Halloween. How many of you all have egged a house, egged a car, just being a kid? That's something that we're taught to do on Halloween. You just egg something. Okay, you egg a car, messes up the paint. That's what we've all heard, right? Right over here at the corner of Boone and Lowry, not too far from our prestigious university and college, AU Center, a young man and his friends, they egged this guy's car. The guy got pissed, went to his car, hunted down the young man, and shot him and killed him. All because right there at Lowry and Boone, not too far from our college.
Here's the black and the black. Here's the black and the man black.
Yes, everybody was black. Shot it, killed it. The next story that I heard was down in Savannah, where two young men who happened to be SCAD students, Savannah College of Art and Design, SCAD students, were robbed by three other young men, all between the ages of 18 and 20. One was killed and the other one was shot in the hip. And it was a robbery. Those three young men somehow, some way made it up here. They were found in Roswell and they've been extradited back down to Savannah so that they can be charged. These are young people. Hold on. The third thing that was really disturbing was this drive-by that took place on Saturday night, right over here on Donald L. Hollowell, Bankhead Highway, not too far from our illustrious, prestigious Morehouse College, Spelman College, Atlanta University, where some people just happened to be at the club, having a Halloween party, and a car drives by. They let off 22 shots. 5 of them hit that club. 4 of them hit people. 1 of them caught a lady in her head 2 days before her birthday. She's brain dead. She has 2 kids. Now, I would imagine that this was probably an incident of gang violence, maybe gang violence initiation. But the question that I am concerned about is how have we gotten to the point where we have such a lack of love of life, and how have we gotten to the point of feeling as though we have been denied? This matters because these are issues affecting our community. Hold your questions, okay? Let me just get all of this out. What you need to be doing is taking notes. Every single night there is something on the news about young people getting killed, somebody being robbed, and every night it's flashed on there the picture or the sketch or the name of some young person that unfortunately most of the time is a black male. There's a problem going on. There is a problem going on. Let me offer you a bit of statistics. One second. The CDC said that youth violence, homicide in particular, is identified as the second leading cause of death of people aged 10 to 24. It is the leading cause for African Americans at 60%.
Gang violence?
Yes. Homicidal youth violence. 60% among African Americans. It is the second leading cause for Hispanics and Asian Pacific Islanders, and the third leading cause of death for American Indians and Alaska Natives. Most victims are male at 86%. Most victims are male at 86%. And most of them are killed by a firearm at 82%. These numbers are astonishing. There is a problem going on. Between 1992 and 2006, rates of school-associated student homicides increased. And they have remained significantly higher for inner-city high school males. Former U.S. Surgeon General David Satcher, who was also the president of the Morehouse School of Medicine, identified youth violence as an epidemic. It is an epidemic. However, these risk factors, or those indicators that can predict whether or not a child is vulnerable to violence, can be offset by protective factors. We'll talk about those. 2008 CDC data links youth violence to poor grades and poverty. Poor grades and poverty. Education and poverty. Why do you think that it's related to education and poverty? Because education is inextricably linked to economic access. Supposedly, the formula goes, is the more education you have, the more access you have to resources. So they're saying, they're contending that this notion of youth violence is based on poor grades and poverty. Now, in our last session, like I said, we talked about this whole documentary, Walking with Guns. Let me tell you a little bit about how that documentary came about. Of course, we know T.I. got caught in the Walgreens parking lot with an ass of guns, the whole arsenal, trying to buy a whole arsenal to protect his family, the story goes. He was protecting his family because not too long ago, he was up in Ohio at a club. There was some words exchanged. The locals got pissed. When he left, they drove up beside him and shot up his van. His best friend got killed. When they were trying to move Falant to the other van, those same young men, who we have learned to be black, young men, young, came back and opened fire again, shot up that man. So it was really just this little war that was going on simply because somebody couldn't get in the VIP. Now, what does that indicate to you? Resources. I'm a have, I'm in VIP. You're a have not. You're not in VIP. And you're not going to come up here. So we exchange words and we resolve our issues by killing somebody. That's how, for some reason, we've gotten to the point where we are resolving our issues with a firearm. Now, let me go to this clip, because this is where I want us to talk a little bit about this issue. I'm going to show this 8-minute clip. I want you to write your questions down that you might have so that you don't forget them, because I do want you to...
Dr. Wilson, I have a question. The quote you said the more education you have,
the more access to resources you have. The more education you have, education and economics are inextricably linked. That's why in that study, it's saying that youth violence is on the increase because of lack of resources, poverty, poor grades, lack of education. So when T.I. got caught with these guns at Walgreens, of course, you know, he was sentenced to 1,500 hours of community service. He had to go and talk to young people about nonviolence. That's like telling me to go talk to a football team about how to run the ball up and down the field. I don't know anything about it. So you got this young man. You've worked out an arrangement with all the powers that be because you feel like he could do a little bit more service out of jail rather than in jail. I mean, it was a very, very ballsy move of David Namias.
Who's that?
David Namias was the U.S. attorney at that time prosecuting the case. It was a very ballsy move because he was saying that this youth violence is getting out of hand. So what we need to do is, rather than put this rapper in jail, let's really do some sort of take a civil rights approach and have him go and speak to young people, and maybe that could begin to curb this issue. But he doesn't know anything about nonviolence. I met Tip when I was writing for XXL magazine. And I said to myself, well, wait a minute. I work with Andy Young. This young man knows nothing about nonviolence. Will he sit down and talk to him to try to give him some sort of training, some sort of background on what it is he needs to be doing in his own life and what it is that he needs to be telling young people? Ambassador Young, of course, you guys can see the type of person he is in talking to the younger generation. He was obliged to do it. He did it. That is how Walking with Guns came about. Ambassador Young took a very scared, straight approach. Took Tip